Well, good morning. I'm calling the regular meeting of the Joint Organizational Governance Committee of the Board of Retirement and the Board of Investment. Today, being Wednesday, November 16th, is 8 a.m. And my understanding is that we have a quorum. Madam Secretary, would you
Yes.
provide us with instructions?
Thank you, Chair Santos. This meeting is being held as a virtual and an in-person meeting, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Mr. Green? Ms. Greenwood? Mr. Kehoe?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Harris?
Present.
Ms. Sanchez?
Present.
Mr. Sanchez? Mr. Pryor?
I'm here.
And Chair Santos?
Here.
Okay. Staff participating in the meeting include CEO Santos Cramen, Deputy CEO Luis Lugo, Assistant Executive Officers JJ Popovich and Laura Guglielmo, CIO John Grable, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice. We also have several division managers in this meeting that will be answering any questions regarding the budget. Trustees, please use or raise your hand Zoom option to be placed in the queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute their mics until you're ready to speak. And now we may proceed with the agenda.
Excuse me, I didn't hear my name called.
Oh, I forgot the rest of the trustees. So sorry. Okay, Mr. Knox.
I'm sitting right next to you, Linda.
Sure is the only one next to me. Mr. Bernstein,
I'm here.
Miss Gray, Mr. Moore,
I'm here.
Mr. Robbins, Ms. Zapanta, Mr. Jones,
Present.
Mr. Kelly, and Mrs. Jones. Okay, we may proceed with the agenda.
Great, thank you, Linda. At this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for April 22nd, 2022.
I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been moved on second. Any corrections? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Green, Ms. Greenwood, Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mr. Pryor,
Aye.
Chair Santos.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Great, thank you. Next item is public comment. Linda, do we have any requests to speak?
We have not received any requests.
Okay, thank you. We'll move forward to consent items. Consent item A. I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
I will
I'll second.
second. Okay, thank you, Mr. Harris. It's been moved and second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mr. Pryor,
Aye.
and Chair Santos.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. Moving forward to non-consent items. Subsection A, a recommendation by Dr. Latoya regarding several classifications. Ms. Latoya, and that's for item 1 and item 2. We need to approve implementation of the proposed classification and compensation changes. Ms. Latoya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Santos, and good morning to all the trustees. I am pleased to bring for you this morning 3 sets of recommendations related to a classification and compensation study conducted in the Financial and Accounting Services Division, which we refer to as FASD. Specifically, we are requesting 5 classification and compensation changes to Accounting Officer 2, Accounting Officer, Senior Accountant, Accounting Technician, and Accountant, and then to create various classifications related to the investment accounting section. And then lastly, to the lead one, accounting technician 2 position, which is the supervisory position that we haven't had budgeted for many years. Specifically, between 2015 and 2018, Human Resources conducted various recruitments for the accounting classifications. We did find that it was significantly harder to find qualified candidates to serve in our investment accounting divisions or section, investment accounting section within FASD division. And we did find it's because of a mismatch between the way that our current accountant classification is set up with its minimum qualifications and what is typically held in terms of experience and education for very well qualified investment accountants. So in 2017, we engaged with Aon to conduct a classification study, and they gave us lots of recommendations, which we reviewed with our partners in FASD, our partners at the union, and with management, and we have come up with these recommendations, very specifically to create a second set of accountant classifications for investment accountant that will help us both attract and retain qualified investment accountants. One of the things that you might find interesting here is the organizational chart, that's attachment A. It shows the proposed org chart, but in addition, how the changes in classifications will be reflected within the organization. So we very clearly have a general accounting section and an investment accounting section, and you're able to see the classification changes there. So I'm happy to answer any questions, stand for questions.
I don't see any questions.
I have a question.
Mr. Moore.
Yeah. I saw that some of the positions, the minimum qualifications were changed and they were effectively lowered, it looked like to me. And I noticed in the executive summary that the Aon study identified compensation, of course, and I think the applicants wanted to know if they could work remotely because the recruitments took place that happened during the COVID. And then minimum qualifications appeared to be a problem. And, you know, it seems to me that the outcome of all the reclassifications are to increase salaries and lower qualifications. And there was not a lot of real discussion, because we don't have a copy of the report, on why we would want to lower qualifications and delete requirements for a degree. So I would like to know what the rationale behind that is. And as an aside, I'd like to know how many certified public accountants we have on our staff now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moore. So there's a couple of things. The more recent recruitments did have a couple of candidates, I think 3 decline because of a combination of salary and remote work. So this was a recruitment conducted in 2021, just last year. Previously, 2015 through 18 is where the requirements became an issue and why we changed them specifically for investment accountant and senior investment accountant. We found that investment accountants and senior investment accountants would not have the same number of accounting units. People who end up being investment accountants tend to have finance, economic, and other units that they have taken and completed towards their degree that are not straight finance and accounting. So we've seen a lot of people with many more economics, completed classes in economics. They still have to have a degree. It's just that the number of units completed has changed. Oh,
Well,
and
it didn't say that in the minimum qualifications that a degree was required, except in, I think, the investment officer position. Everything else said you had to have so many units. So does that mean all you have to do is take 21 units and you meet the minimum qualifications if you have experience? Or does it mean you have to have a degree and these course requirements in that degree program? And that's what I don't understand, is how we are to me, we're dumbing down the qualifications. And over the long term, is that what we want to have for $100 million pension fund is an accounting staff with no CPAs and 2 people that have a degree out of 30 people that are looking over our accounting.
Yeah, that's not the intent here. We do in our selection process offer, the very poorly worded is extra points. So we talk about selection requirements and desirables. We do desire people who have bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, and we do award them additional points in the assessment process. We do have quite a few CPAs on staff here currently. I don't have that information in front of me right now. I can get back to you with that, but that is not the intent to reduce the qualifications for these positions. It is to make sure that they have a number of units in specific areas, because that is the best professional preparation. So for example, I have a degree in psychology. I could also have completed all of these units. So we want to get away from saying that a person must have had a degree in specifically accounting, because people have degrees in all sorts of things. So maybe business administration, and then they take additional professional preparation to prepare them to do this work. This is especially important to not be a barrier to people who have had career changes, and people who have learned on the job and maybe gotten something like a degree in public administration, which is very well suited for this type of work. So I'm being told that 6 current staff members in our finance and accounting division have CPAs. Are CPAs, sorry. Yeah.
Well, that's great. So when you announce or advertise and list the minimum qualifications, there's going to be more information than we have in this package to let people who are wanting to apply for an accounting, investment accounting position, that they can have a degree in something as long as that degree includes these courses.
Yes, because that is the minimum. So the minimum would be these specific courses. And then we would say something like a well-qualified candidate or a desirable candidate also has X amount of experience and X amount of professional preparation.
Okay, so it doesn't say a bachelor's degree required with this minimum course content. It just says course content.
That is the minimum experience. We don't want to set any artificial barriers. The minimum experience and training are supposed to be the minimum to complete the job successfully. We do exceed, our candidates often exceed the minimums, and they often exceed our selection requirements.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Knox, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to Mr. Moore's point, and then you'll be next. So I understand correctly, just following up from Mr. Moore discussion, is so we will expect somebody, let's say somebody with a finance degree, but we also want that particular individual that should have completed enough accounting units to qualify he or she to sit down for the CPA exam. Is that correct?
No.
Because,
So holding a certificate is not a requirement.
Well, I didn't say a certificate, excuse me. For example, I'll give you an example. My son has a degree in finance and economics, but he also, before he graduated, he stayed an extra year and also fulfilled all the units required for him to sit down for his CPA.
Mm-hmm.
So, which I thought it was a good idea, because somebody like him with that type of education, that was in the experience, of course, will be eminently qualified for this type of position that we are looking at, which I think is good, in my view. And if that's not the thought, I will recommend that that we include in the requirements that, in addition to the finance and economics requirements for investments, that they also have sufficient units that qualify them to sit down for the CPA. Because I think that's what Mr. Moore was saying is, and I agree with that, is that we don't want to dummy down the classification, but we want it upgraded. And the only way we can do that is what I just said with regards to the sufficient units in accounting to doesn't require a certificate.
Yeah. So we do incentivize our accountants, our accounting series, so all of the accountant positions, with a 5.5% certification bonus if they do hold a CPA. So whereas it's not in line with the concept of minimum requirements, decreasing barriers, we do incentivize for it because we do want a highly qualified workforce.
Got it. Mr. Knox.
Thank you, Chair Santos. I guess my concern would be that we have to be careful not being so specific, to ensure that there is a qualified group of people out there that not only have what you're looking for and desire, but that are actually going to want to come work here. Because my sense is, and forgive the comparison, but in my day job, we have accountants and we have accountants that work in investment accounting. And I get that our investment operation is very different than Mr. Grable's, but at the end of the day, they're accounting for transactions. And I would not want to build something so intricate that we don't get people that want to work here. I almost wonder, and I'm not on the committee voting today, but I guess I'm supportive of the changes. If you feel, Dr. Ntoya, this is going to help us, recruit. I'd also be curious to know if we're going to improve our recruitment efforts beyond just posting on LinkedIn. I mean, maybe we need to be a little more proactive ourselves in going to get folks, but maybe taking a look at training the folks we do have, that are interested in being an accountant and training them up to take these higher paying jobs. So it's not just a matter of going out and getting the people for this spot, but training the ones that we have or bringing them in at a different level. So just some general thoughts and concerns. Appreciate it, Chair Santos.
Thank you. Anybody else? At this point, if Mr. Grable is on the line, I would like to address a question to him.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Grable. I'm glad you're here. So I'm sure you've been listening to our discussions, and I would like to hear from you with regards to my idea of having an individual to have sufficient units to qualify that individual to sit down for the CPA, in addition to the other finance courses that we're looking at. Do you have an opinion as to that particular requirement, or what is your view in terms of what's being proposed here?
These positions are in FASD as opposed to the investment office, although we work very closely together. So they're not, these positions do not report up to me. I think that what Carly's talking about, maybe the difference between what we refer to in job bulletins as minimum qualifications, requirements versus desirable characteristics. And I think that there are a lot of qualities, characteristics, experiences that are listed in job bulletins as desirables. And so I think that it's just, where that hard line is drawn per what Mr. Knox was discussing in terms of how we, attract people, but then how we educate, retain, motivate people such that they can make a career at LACERA.
So if I understand you correctly, so these individuals will be reported to Mr. Ranger?
Yes.
Is he on the line? Thank
Yes.
you, Mr. Grable. Appreciate it.
Yes, good morning, Chair Santos. I'm here.
Good morning, sir. I want to repeat the question that I asked of Mr. Graybull. My idea that in the individual or the requirement for this classification will have sufficient, and you're a US CPA, so you understand what I'm talking about, that a particular individual will have sufficient units to qualify that individual to sit down for the CPA, in addition to the investment or finance courses. What is your opinion on that vis-a-vis the request here? It's important for me to hear from you since they're going to be working for you.
Sure. Okay, so we might be talking about two different things. Let me try to address those two things. One is the requirements to sit for the CPA exam. Those requirements have changed over the years, and generally today you need a little bit more than a bachelor's degree in order to sit for the CPA exam in terms of your requirements, in terms of the units. So it is a little bit higher bar. I believe that the universities have adjusted their programs such that it does require a fairly high level of units. So that's kind of a little bit of a separate discussion. When we're talking about units in these job classifications, I think we're talking more on the minimum side in terms of these specifications as compared to the minimums for the CPA exam, which are substantially higher. So if a person comes in and they only have the minimum number of units, that person would probably want to finish their degree as well as the additional units required to sit for the exam, then sit for the CPA exam. Once they pass that exam, I believe, and I've done this for at least one staff, I'm qualified to sign off for their experience requirements. So they need the units as well as the experience. So after 2 years, I can sign off. So I'm not sure if I've addressed in terms of the CPA exam requirement.
No, I get that because my son had to stay an additional year. So I totally agree with that.
Okay. As far as investment accountant positions, these are somewhat unique. What we found over the years is that a lot of folks who work for investment firms and consulting firms, they don't necessarily have accounting degrees. They may have some economic background, some investment background. They might have other degrees in other areas, but what they do end up doing is get experience in the investment accounting world or the investment world. So, and I've worked with HR a number of times, and we've seen qualified candidates from investment firms that apply to LACERA, but they don't meet the minimum specific accounting requirements. So they have the knowledge that we want, and they have that skill set and that experience, but these accounting specific units they don't necessarily have. So it does somewhat limit it. So we went back and forth and talked about this a number of times, and it's not that we want to lower the quality of our candidates, it's that we want to expand our reach. We want to be able to hire somebody who has an economics degree that worked for Western for 10 years. We want to get them on board because they want to work for LACERA and they have the experience that we need. So the investment accounting one is a little bit sort of unique in that regard. On the general accounting side, we do like folks to have the normal units and meet and have that accounting experience. That's really helpful on the general accounting side. On the investment accounting side, we want it to be a little more broad.
Great, thank you very much. That really helps me. So just to summarize this proposal that we have in front of us meet your needs in terms of getting these people on board. Well, at least that's your belief. Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate that. Any other question, comment?
Chair Santos, let me just say that this is the other Santos.
Mr. Kryman.
Yes, we've gone back and forth on this for ever since I got here, quite frankly, 3 years ago. And it's really a recruitment strategy in terms of a wider net. And then the selection process is really where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, where we have the opportunity to interview the candidates and make sure that they have the qualifications and the experience that we really need, because we're looking for experience. And then we do pride ourselves, quite frankly, in developing staff. And so an individual that comes into to LACERA, for example, that does not have a CPA, but desires to do that. If they come into LACERA, that's one of the opportunities and one of the selling points that we have to offer somebody to come into LACERA. So I'm supportive of this particular recommendation from Dr. Natoya, Ted, and his team. And so I would strongly encourage a yes vote on this particular item. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that, Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you. I'm also in support of this. I think it's a good move for the organization. I appreciate all the staff's work on it. My question is overall budgetary impact. Can we just address that briefly on what the overall budgetary impact will be on these changes?
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. The budget impact is of $94,000 increase. And that covers the costs for increased salaries across all 8 classifications.
Is that existing impact, or is that budget assumed impact when filling all of the positions?
Filling all of the positions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Mr. Kehoe. Anybody else? If not, I will entertain a motion
I'll make it.
to adopt recommendation 1, 2, and 3.
Mr. Santos, the motion is to advance this to the Board of Retirement and Board of Investment for approval.
Correct. I stand
I'll
corrected.
move that staff recommendation.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. I don't see any requests for further discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kehoe,
Aye.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Ms. Sanchez,
Aye.
Mr. Pryor, Mr. Pryor, Chair Santos.
Yes.
So we only have 4, so it didn't pass. We lost our quorum. Let me just see if I can get Mr. Pryor. Hold on. No. So we don't have a quorum, so we'll bring
Okay,
this to the next.
we can table this and move to discuss subsection B regarding the budget.
Can I make a
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kehoe.
Yeah, I just recommend that if we don't get a quorum, that we direct staff to move this forward to the full boards with a statement that there wasn't a quorum, but we had 4 yeses.
That's an excellent idea. So that will be what is, well, nothing. It's direction. Okay, that's wonderful. So the matter is going to be forwarded to the boards. As stated by Mr. Kehoe. Okay, moving forward to subsection B regarding the changes to the budget. Ms. Guglielmo, did I say that correctly? I'm sorry.
It's not a problem, Chair. Good morning, Chair Santos and members of the committee and the rest of the board. Appreciate having you here today. This is also an action item, so I'll present this information, but without a quorum, the board will not be, the committee will not be able to act. I would like to first off by acknowledging the work of staff who conducted this mid-year budget assessment for us. We have Roberta Van Noortrek, our assistant or our interim Administrative Services Division Manager, as well as our budget team members, Kaylin Ung and Kevin Sakamoto. Before you today is our management recommendations for a mid-year budget adjustment for the fiscal year 2022-2023 adopted administrative budget, and we are not recommending any changes to the retiree healthcare or OPEB trust budgets at this time. I'm running the slides myself while we're doing this, so it's a little awkward. I apologize for that. The budget policy anticipates that the mid-year adjustments will be required, and we are required to assess the status of the budget by December every year. So before you are our recommendations. The CEO, as a reminder, has the authority to transfer up to $1 million across major accounts, our major accounts being the salary and employee benefits accounts and the services and supplies account, but major accounts. And he has the flexibility of transferring funds within those without limit. The JOGC then has the responsibility to review and recommend action to the Board of Retirement and the Board of Investments. And then ultimately the Board of Retirement and Board of Investments are required to approve any transfers outside of the CEO's authority and approve any position requests which are not requested today. And all of the actions today fall within our SURL limits. We're not recommending any changes to appropriations. I apologize for some errors in the slides in this slide that you received. Whoops. Sorry about that. Oops. This is why we like other people to do the slides. Yeah, I will do that. Just a moment. Thank you, Mr. Popovich. So on this slide, I made some adjustments for today, but in your package, there was an error. So we are proposing to transfer just under $3 million between the salary and employee benefits line and the services and supplies. And we will discuss a little bit more about how that works or what changes are within there. In essence, we are transferring $1.2 million out of the permanent salaries and $1.8 million out of variable benefits. And those will go into various services and supplies, which I'll speak about in a moment. We're also proposing transferring savings out of the permanent salaries account into the temporary salary account. And that is really the savings that we're experiencing in our salaries and employee benefits is largely related to the fact that our hiring plan is not going as ambitiously as we had planned as part of the budget. We were purposely pretty ambitious in our budget. We're falling a little bit behind that. We have recently updated our hiring plan, and based on that updated hiring plan, we identified potential saving, or we identified available savings in the current year to be able to address our needs so that there's no net new appropriation. Next slide, TJ. Thank you. So this slide and the next slide, I'm going to have you go to, and whoops, I think that's right. Slides 3 and 4 talk about the changes across the various departments. So we want to talk about some of the most significant, sorry, next slide, please. Some of them, there's kind of some significant increases to the services and supplies budget, and in total it's about $2.9 million. We have $750,000 for administrative services renovation costs. This is an interesting topic because we originally budgeted funds for the renovation of our 7th floor, which houses our financial services and accounting, financial and accounting services department, or FASD, and our system staff. This was originally budgeted last fiscal year in 21-22 at $1.3 million. We realized last year that the project was delayed, and we thought, we were optimistic and thought that we would be able to spend about half the money. And so we budgeted $750,000 in the current year, 22-23. However, the project was further delayed than that. And so the full $1.3 million is required in the current fiscal year. So we're proposing transferring $750,000 into the renovation budget within admin services. There's also a significant $1.5 million increase for our outside legal fees, which were just higher than we anticipated, given the current the current litigation that's currently before the organization. And then we have some adjustments in technology, which is primarily in the systems division, but also in information security. So we have $150,000 for our UPS uninterruptible power supply upgrade. This was originally budgeted last fiscal year and deferred, and we need to take care of that this year. We also have an increase for our AWS services of $100,000 that was not anticipated. And we are proposing $100,000 that was unbudgeted for automating our human resources. We've got some ideas that to be able to allow human resources to operate more effectively and efficiently, to provide better services to the rest of the organization. And clearly we have some challenges within human resources capacity. So we're hoping that these increases we anticipate that these increases will help that division be able to do more with existing resources. And lastly, we're proposing $139,000 increase for information security software and our assessment. And that's just to, keep pace with the modern trends. Next slide, please. I guess this is the next slide. Sorry. This is to talk about adjustments to this outlines sort of the adjustments, the $1.2 million out of salaries and into variable benefits for a total of $2.9 million, almost $3 million across the board. So that's that we see that savings of 3% in salaries and employee benefits. Next slide. And next we'll talk about our budget to actual for the first quarter. Next slide. This is important to point. Our data is a little bit stale. We really only have actual data through the first quarter. You'll note that we have a pending budget application system where we hope to have better reporting. Our reporting is a little bit stale, and our salaries tend to be about a month behind actual. So this is through September 30th. We see a variance of 82.2% in salary and employee benefits, where we would expect to be about 75% for that quarter. And services and supplies is a little under that 75%. That does not include some of the kind of major costs that we anticipate, like the renovation budget that we talked about. So that's why that increase is necessary. Next slide, please. For our retiree and healthcare budget, we also assessed where we are today. You'll note here on our salaries and employee benefits, we are a little bit below what we expected at 62% and 77% in salaries and supplies, 70% overall for that first quarter. We are not proposing any adjustments at this time, but we are monitoring this budget carefully to see if any adjustments may be necessary in the future. Next slide. And ultimately, we are requesting that the JOGC review and recommend these recommendations to the Board of Retirement and the Board of Investments, and we're happy to answer any questions that any trustees may have.
Great, thank you, Mr. Knox.
Thank you very much for the information. Just curious, when you mentioned the renovation, I know that's been an ongoing topic that's been hanging out there. Just curious to know, does that change given, the telework situation? We mentioned that a little earlier this morning. Will you be doing a larger space utilization study to figure out if you can consolidate space, if we need all the space, if renovations are really necessary, or are different renovations necessary for hoteling or whatever? So just kind of a larger question.
That's a great point, and it is part of the reason this project was delayed. We didn't do like an overall sort of assessment about what we might want to do. Our plan is to have staff in the office on a hybrid schedule. So we do want to encourage collaboration within staff. one thing we did differently, so the 7th floor has not been renovated in over 20 years. So it was definitely needed. However, we did assess our needs, and we are moving to a hoteling approach for that floor. So we changed the way we designed the floor. So there is more collaborative space. So there are fewer cubicles and offices for folks who are coming in, but there is more collaborative space, and we still can accommodate everyone if we needed to bring the whole team in, but they wouldn't necessarily have like a private space. It'd be more of a bullpen. But again, we really kind of tried to think about how we can reimagine our space to be more collaborative. And I think particularly for the systems division, that's really great because so much of their work does involve a lot of collaboration.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Guglielmo.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Kehoe.
I just want to say I appreciate the staff's hard work on this. The presentation was excellent, and how we're applying the mid-year budget process and working through our budget and doing this and keeping the board informed is exactly the way it should work. And I just want to say from my end, I noticed a change, positive change. It's good, and keep that coming. You got the support from myself, and I'm sure many of the other board members. So thank you to staff on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. Mr. Jones.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Question here, a couple things kind of related to what Trustee Kehoe asked, it wasn't Kehoe, it was Trustee Knox about the space and whether we're rethinking space given the remote. The other thing that I've noticed in the couple of years that I've been here is in some part due to market conditions and labor market conditions, the amount of temporary staffing that we use, and then I see the shift going on here. In your mind's eye, and maybe this is a conversation or a question for Santos, is the structure of full-time hire to temporary hire changed? Are we at a new normal level where the threshold that it seems like we keep coming short of from a full staffing perspective may be related to an old labor market condition, which is different from the current one? And should we anticipate a higher buffer of temporary staffing kind of going forward for some of the roles that you're looking for this temporary bump to solve? I'm just curious about that. And then the second question, somewhat related to staffing, is given the investments we've made in technology over the last 12 to 18 months, and in part going to remote, have you been able to quantify yet whether we've achieved any kind of operational leverage with that technology that has kind of helped us maybe reduce the need in part for force or permanent force additions that we didn't foresee prior to the technology investments, if that makes sense? If you need me to clarify, let me know, but hopefully my syntax wasn't too horrible.
Yeah, I'll try to answer your questions, and then Ms. Guglielmo can jump in after. I think in terms of the temporary staff and the permanent staff, the strategy is to try to hire more of the permanent staff as opposed to temps. And so we're moving in that direction. We have a hiring plan that's in place. We've tiered the various positions, making sure that the most important positions are in tier 1, of course, and we're working through that. And so you should see, or my expectation is that we're going to begin to see a change in the hiring structure in terms of temp employees. We'll always have temporary employees, but we want to reduce. I think we were somewhere around 20% or 20, I think it was, if I remember correctly, it's right around the 20% category. And so we want to reduce that as much as we possibly can. So that's the way we're moving. In terms of efficiencies, I believe that we have become more efficient. The one thing that and we can demonstrate that, I think that there were a few reports that we presented to the operations committee, I believe, the OOC that talked about some of the issues that we had in the call center and the volume that we're seeing. So what's happening is because we have a new system, the paradigm has shifted, the expectations from our members has also shifted. And so our workload has increased significantly as a result of the convenience that they have now that they can, sit in their living room and have a counseling session with one of our staff. And so I can't tell you that we're going to eliminate staff. I think that the trend is probably that our next budget cycle, we're going to look at our staffing levels pretty closely. I don't anticipate a large increase in the number of staff, but I don't anticipate a decrease in the number of staff either. And so we're doing more.
Just to be clear, I didn't mean to insinuate that I was looking for necessarily a reduction in net staff, just in the reduction in the anticipated need for additional staff. Were we seeing some leverage from the technology that rather than adding 10 people, we might be looking to add 5? Somewhere there. I just wanted to make sure, because I know.
That's definitely a question that we're grappling with, because from what I can tell, and I actually monitor calls now, just to hear that the complexity, especially in the health area, the number of questions that come out of our members, the confusion that they have. Our staff does a wonderful job of counseling them in terms of their pension benefits, and then, of course, the healthcare side as well. I don't think that technology is going to be able to replicate that or to reduce that. So we are going to be dependent on the number of staff that we have to train, for example, because it is a pretty complex area. And so we're looking at trying to train people in 2 different tracks, for example, one member services and one on the benefits side, one of retiree healthcare, for example, so that we can get more people on the floor. But I don't anticipate a reduction in the number of staff, or I don't expect a huge explosion either of the number of staff. But technology has definitely assisted us with trying to help more members. And so the direction that I've given my staff is that I want to reduce the number of temp employees, especially in the IT arena, and bring them to permanent status, because I just think it's a better model for LACERA in the end. Did you want to add anything?
I just wanted, thank you, Mr. Kryman. I wanted to just sort of that there's a workload issue that, if you think about the trends that you're hearing, the demographic changes that, more people, older people are, people are starting to retire more. We're seeing those trends across LA County, our primary employer, right? And so the volume of retirees has been increasing in recent years. That's probably going to continue for a while. We'll be monitoring that, because at some point that should level out and it should start to decrease again as the demographic changes occur, as the demographics of our workforce change. So we need to be able to leverage the technology to anticipate that better than we've been able to do in the past, and modulate our workload accordingly, our staffing accordingly, so we can provide better service. So that's part of the reason we're seeing sort of a challenge in providing service and wait times, is that we've had just a huge increase over the last few years that we, frankly should have realized was going to be coming. At the same time, we're losing our own staff because they're also of retirement age. So it's been just that's been one of the challenges that we've had in terms of kind of keeping pace with the hiring. And then with regard to the temporary versus permanent staffing, with our labor partners, we really, our employees want permanent jobs. And we want to be able to give them permanent jobs and permanent benefits. And so one of the advantages of the temporary staffing is that it helps us meet some, our workload while we're trying to get there. And we have kept people in a temporary position longer than is ideal. And I agree with Mr. Kryman. Temporary staff will always be part of the equation, but ideally that temporary staff is kind of turning over and they're becoming permanent staff, or they're moving on, and we're hiring permanent staff to meet our permanent needs. So but in our strategy for our hiring plan, and I meant to mention this and I forgot, we are going to be bringing our hiring plan to the OOC next month, and I believe the BOI, but definitely the OOC. And we're going to, it's something that we have recently updated, shared with staff, shared with our labor partners. So we want to make sure you're aware of it as well. And part of our strategy in our hiring plan is where we have options to meet our needs, like temporary staffing. Some of those positions we have deferred in our hiring plan because we can't hire a temporary investment officer, for example. But we can hire a temporary systems programmer.
Yeah, and I'm
so
not even
try to
suggesting.
address that on a very, it's very actively managed.
Yeah, no,
to try to work out.
I've just been monitoring that the number of public sector, city of New York, Bloomberg published something yesterday. They're 19,000 employees short compared to where they were pre-pandemic. So if you look at some of the general labor market shortages across sectors, it's not that we want to hire temporary or whatever. It's just, I think part of the way I try to preface it is that if there's a labor market or market shortage of people who want to work or who are available to work in the public sector, period, then I would assume in your scenario planning, while we have the ideal, with who we'd like to hire and make permanent and everything else. And again, this is only signaled in some measure by a significant part of the budget that we're shifting here is going towards temporary staffing. And my question was just, is that a short-term reaction, or is that more indicative of where the labor market is going in general? And should we anticipate a higher line item for agency staffing, not because we don't want to hire more permanent workers, but because the labor market is short of the type of people, given our retirements and everything else, that may want to come work, in the public sector, given all the other options and things of that nature. So I was just a question strategically, since I know the shortage has been here in a year and a half or year and 3/4 that I've been here, and just wondering if it's more a part of a trend, a labor market trend, versus just some short-term thing that we're trying to react to and mitigate in the near term. So thanks so much for I didn't mean to waylay the thing, but I was just kind of reacting to the budget item there, and whether or not you all foresaw a different ratio of temporary to permanent going forward because of the shortages overall in the market. But thanks.
Yeah, I do think that there's a labor change or demographic change that's occurring, right? So older employees, generationally, baby boomers, for example, right, were more attracted to and more typically would stay for that long-term 30+ year career that government is so well known for. Whereas today's Gen Zs, millennials, they see their career horizon in shorter buckets. And so we may not, I think we're going to see those sort of changes, both for our staff here at LACERA, but also the county is going to see those kinds of changes. And that's going to change how our benefits, it's going to make things a little bit more complicated for our county partners, and as well as ourselves, as we figure out a way to show people that they have career options. One of the awesome things about government, in my experience, is that you can have different careers with the same employer, so that you can do the different things that maybe a millennial or Gen Xer or Gen Zer might find really exciting, to be able to kind of change careers, but have the stability of the common employer and the awesome benefits we're able to offer.
Yep.
Any other comments? I just want to make a quick comment. I agree that from my perspective, increasing the staff, it's something that we must do. Just to give you an idea, to do a virtual counseling session with the staff regarding the pension benefits and the retiree healthcare is is like 3 months wait. So I attribute that because of lack of staffing, or we don't have the capacity to be able to do that, let's say within 30 days. So and those people cannot be replaced, because I agree with Mr. Kreiman. The retiree healthcare counseling and information is very complex, and I will venture to say that we probably takes an average county employee to sit to those presentations regarding the retiree healthcare maybe 2 or 3 times, because it's just very complex, between Medicare and what the county does and the different plans we have. It's just very complex in my view. So anyway, Linda, do we still don't have a quorum? Where are we?
We don't have a quorum.
All right. So unless there's an objection, I'm going to follow Mr. Keogh's advice on the previous item, that we move this forward to the respective boards. Is there any objection from my colleagues to do that? Mr. Keogh is in agreement. Okay, great. So that will be the direction to the staff that send this forward to the BOR and the BOI, with the explanation that we don't have the quorum, but there is no objection to moving this matter forward. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, great. So moving forward. I believe next item is item for staff review.
I don't have anything, Mr. Santos.
And items for future agenda.
Nothing.
Nothing. Good of the order. Anyone would like to make a statement?
If I could just make a quick observation, I thought this meeting went well today in this format. I'm just wondering if there isn't a way that we could activate the camera on the panelist computer, so when they come up to speak, we're getting a shot close to them, not that wide shot. This was better today than last time, so I appreciate the efforts that have already been undertaken to improve it. But if there's a way that we could activate those cameras, then when as a person steps away, they could just turn the camera off. As the next speaker comes in, they could turn it on. They could put their name in there. So it'd be much more like it is for the rest of us, seeing a close one shot. But I appreciate the efforts of staff. This went off, I think, extremely well. Thank you.
Great, thank you for those comments. I agree with Mr. Harris. And again, thank you very much to the staff. And at this point, unless any further comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
You too.
Thanks, Herman.
Take care.